Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another gun store vlog, and today I'm going to be talking about a question I get often here on YouTube and my email and over the phone all the time. And that is this year or is now a good time to get into the firearms industry or start a gun-related business? So anyway, there's a lot to unpack with that question. That'll be the central theme of this video. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Okay, so back at the beginning of 2019, I did a video very similar to this one, answering the question, is now, at the beginning of 2019, a good time to get into the gun business? Now, at the time, that was coming on the heels of the presidential election. Donald Trump won in 2016. We had seen 2 years of commerce in the firearms industry by the time I had made that video. Now, again, we had seen after the 2016 election, President Donald Trump had won, and we saw demand drop off by about 33%. So we were in a situation of very high supply and very low demand, which is very much the inverse of what we are seeing now. Now, in that video, I kind of lean towards, because demand is so low, this might not be the best time to get into the industry. You have well-established competitors who have a very large share of the small market that existed at the time. And while thinking about making this video, I thought about similar challenges that would ensue from the opposite perspective and came to the conclusion that there really is no best time to enter a market. There wasn't even really a good time to enter the market when I entered the market. The best thing to really do is to understand the challenges that are going to be ahead of you entering the marketplace, and to formulate your plan to open around those challenges. It's never good to give you a sugar-coated perspective of what it's like to be in the industry, because you can easily find, or at least envision, the positives that'll come from running your own firearms store, doing what you love every day, being able to support your family, things like that. But it's the challenges that really need to be addressed. A lot of times when I have conversations with people about this, because I do get a lot of phone calls and emails, my perspective might take a negative tone. Again, it's not being negative, it's more outlining the challenges you're going to face, because that's going to help you more in the long run. Now, if you are not personally thinking about starting a gun store and you've happened across this video, this might still be interesting because it might give you some insight on the firearms industry as a whole. And also, there's going to be a lot of business 101 type stuff in this video. So if you own or run a business, you're going to hear a lot of things that are probably already, par for the course in your life. But then again, this is really intended for people who are maybe new to business, people who do not have a business background but are interested in firearms and maybe want the foundational information to get started, or at least whether or not this is a good time. As I mentioned before, we're seeing the inverse of what was a high supply, low demand. As you all know, we are in a period of extremely high demand and extremely low supply. The problem that's going to come along with that, again, is as you're entering the marketplace, you do have entrenched competitors. Right now, it's the online market that seems to be getting more and more powerful as they are getting better allocations of product. As you're considering entering the marketplace, and this is assuming you're entering a retail outlet, and of course I want to get into a selection of product mix here in a minute. But as you're making a decision to enter the marketplace and create a retail establishment, really product availability and how you're going to supply your new customers is going to be difficult. Now, this is a good opportunity because finding new customers and customers finding out about you is going to be a relatively good thing. Now, that's a difficult challenge people have in a period of low demand, because there's very few people out there looking for things, and because every gun store is just packed with inventory and they're relatively competitive on pricing, again, because everybody's fighting over a very small pool of potential customers. People will tend to go to the most easily found and convenient, or maybe the gun store that they've already done business with in the past. When you get in a period of very high demand and very low supply, consumers are going to leave outside of their typical bubble that they exist in terms of their buying behaviors and habits, and they're going to explore other options because the options that they've used in the past are no longer fulfilling or satisfying the demand that they're looking to fill. So again, if you are a new player in the marketplace, all those local gun stores in your area, all of their customers will find you because they are calling everybody looking for things. I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you live in an area with depressed supply, you're probably picking up the phone every day and calling every gun store in the area. New buyers are doing the same thing. So this could be, if you start a gun store now, this could be a great opportunity for a lot of people in the marketplace to find out about you quickly, which again is a challenge that you typically face when, everybody just keeps going back to their routine gun store destinations. Getting back to the main problem you're going to have, though, on the inverse is the supply. You need to think about how you're going to stock your store when allocations are not going to be really readily shared with you. That's the reality of it. So if we take my store, I've been in business for 7 years, and I do quite a lot of business with my suppliers, but even then, I do not get a whole lot of allocation preference over other established gun stores that have been here before me who might be buying more inventory, and especially the online retailers that buy, they place millions of dollars of orders every year, which far outscales what I am able to produce. It just makes sense that you have your sales reps at these wholesale companies are working on commission. It's easier for them to pick up the phone and call one person who's going to order a lot of inventory rather than having to parse out a lot of fewer purchases. It makes their time more effective, it makes their day easier and more streamlined. Again, on the supply side of things, when people are shipping out inventory, it's easier to send 1 million rounds of ammunition to one person rather than 1,000 rounds of ammunition to multiple different people. Okay, it's just, if the supply chain is so stretched to where you can reduce your operation costs and resources and strain to just easily and quickly get your supply out to a few people who want it, that's obviously the path of least resistance and the path that most businesses are going to take. Now let's talk about your product mix. There's a lot of different options that you can get into in the firearms industry. If you want to be the most common, what I do, that's firearms retail, firearms ammunition, and accessories. You can get into firearms manufacturing, you can get into ammunition manufacturing, and you can get into more of the service type thing like range and training. We already sort of went over the retail side of things, like what I do. Let's talk a little bit about manufacturing. Manufacturing of firearms is going to be very difficult because you really have to manufacture your own designs and products. There are very, very few companies every year that enter that marketplace. Mainly we see them in AR-15 parts and receivers, but by and large, most of you are probably not going to be doing that unless you have your own product figured out and you've probably already come up with your manufacturing process and supply chain. Now is probably a great time to enter the market because your competitors are stocking out of everything. So this would be a great time to get your receivers or AR parts or maybe AR-15s out into the marketplace. The next thing, this is actually surprisingly, well, I shouldn't say surprisingly, but this is a type of question I've been getting a lot from people, a lot of phone calls. People wanting to start ammunition manufacturing or ammunition manufacturing, factories or production lines is probably more of a correct term. But with people and reloading is obviously something a lot of people do. A lot of people get into the idea of, hey, I make myself thousands of rounds of 9mm 380 every single year. Why don't I get into the manufacturing of ammunition? Of course, the supply right now is super depressed. Let's get out and do that. And I've had, even back in periods of lower demand, I've had lots of people approach me with their sort of small line production ammunition operations, and so that seems to be something that's a very common theme. The one thing to keep into account is when you are thinking about creating a business, never take the current market as your barometer for the next 20, 30, or 40 years of your operations. What I mean by that is it sounds good to get into the marketplace now with ammunition because, again, your competitors like Winchester or Federal or Hornady are, and I said Hornady, not Hornaday. Thank you for all the millions of corrections in the last video, by the way. Just creature of habit. But they are out of everything, so there are plenty of people like me who would pay inflated prices and higher prices to get that personally made ammunition that you're setting up that process on to produce. The problem is when the ammunition shortage is over, and I know here comes the onslaught of comments saying that it will never end. It will end. Ammunition will come back. The problem is now the supply is growing. Your products are in the same pool as all the other bigger competitors, and then now pricing does become an issue because if you can't compete with their scalability and their pricing, everybody's going to choose those other brands. Even if your box of ammunition retails at the same price as CCI or Federal or something like that, most consumers are going to gravitate towards the brands that they know function in their firearms and they know and trust, versus a whole new ammo type that they've never seen before. Again, people will make the purchase of your ammunition when it's the only one on the shelf, especially today, but what we are experiencing today is likely not what we're going to be experiencing in 5 years. And will your company still be viable if that's going to happen? Last thing is training and range use. Now, I am not in the range business, although I can make a few assumptions. And if you do own a firing range, I'd be interested to hear this side of things. I have heard from a lot of customers who go to local ranges who say that it is frighteningly scarce on the amount of people that are actually practicing and at the range. That makes sense because there's not a whole lot of ammunition. A lot of gun ranges are making the option of holding back the little ammo that they are getting in stock and only selling it to their customers using their range. That only makes sense. You really have to do what you have to do to keep your main product line moving, which for a range is going to be the range use. They're still stocking the range with staff. They still have to pay, filtration costs or whatever things that are associated with that. So I wonder how that's going along. The one thing about a range or offering training services and stuff is you are not as affected, I would assume, other than, like, for example, me, I deal mainly with the product that I sell. So once I run out of product, that's really can be scary to my business. If you have a range or other sources of revenue coming in, it at least helps offset periods of low supply. And again, even if you're going to get into a retail establishment like me, it's good to diversify and come up with ways to get in other forms of product or at least drive other forms of revenue. I talked about this in the last video. There's transfer fees. Having a really good connection with customers. I am fortunate enough that you guys know with my used gun videos, I have a really good reputation with used firearms in the market. I am very fair. Of course, I'm going to pat myself on the back, but I hear that I am very fair with my offer. My offers tend to beat what my competitors offer, and I charge at market, or oftentimes in the past, before all the craziness, below market on a lot of my products. So I keep a very constant stream of buyers on used inventory and sellers on used inventory in my store. YouTube is a good way that I've diversified my business as well. So, it's good to, if you're going to open that retail business, don't just solely focus on the retail of the product. Try and find other ways to drive other forms of revenue that can offset a period of low supply like we are seeing now. Now, in every single market, there's going to be ups and downs and ebbs and flows in your market. You're going to peak and you're going to valley. Every single industry is faced with that. In the firearm industry, we see peaks and valleys instead of being determined by general market timing, like maybe summer versus winter, which we do see a little bit of in this industry. A lot of it's geared towards politics. There's sort of the predicted peaks and valleys in supply. That is, if around the time of a presidential election, we know that there's going to be heightened demand for products and lower supply. If a Democrat wins, there's typically an extended period of high demand and low supply. If a Republican wins, there's typically a period of low demand and high supply. There are other undeterminate, there's other factors, black swan events that are unforeseeable that definitely shake the industry, and it is volatile in a lot of ways because of this. So we had, when COVID hit, definitely shook up the industry and really is what exacerbated this tremendous, weird lack of inventory that we're seeing right now, and then it's been further pushed or further sort of expanded because of the riots, and then now the election, and then the riots at the Capitol. So there's all sorts of stuff that go on all the time that are very unpredictable, which lead us into situations like this. They are inevitable in this marketplace, and you have to be prepared to handle those things when they happen. So that's basically it on that. To address the fundamental question that this video is attempting to answer, is now a good time to open a business? Again, identify what business you're opening. And most people ask, or I think leaning towards opening a retail store like mine. Again, there's really no good time. Well, there's always a good time. Let me rephrase. There's really no perfect time. There's no time when the stars are going to be aligned and it's going to be easy. It's an incredibly difficult enterprise opening any type of small business. Most do fail. I believe everybody has the capacity to open and operate a very successful business. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of grit and determination. A lot of people are going to make the argument that it's luck. I completely disagree with that. To be perfectly honest with you guys, going into the Trump election, we were not doing that well. And I had even stayed up till 2:30 in the morning watching the election. I knew that if Clinton had won, and I'm not trying to make a statement on who I wanted to win, okay? I'm trying to be apolitical. But if Hillary Clinton had won, I knew that that would sort of bring my business up, that demand would really do well. And we were getting to the point, of course, we were small, so I was not getting a tremendous amount of inventory from my suppliers. We were coming off of the heels of the Sandy Hook panic, so things like 5.56, 22 LR, AR-15s were really hard to get, especially for me as a new player entering the market. Again, I'm going to, sorry to segue, this is, when I opened then, it was a few select items that were hard to get. Now everything's hard to get, so keep that in mind as well. But even then, when it was just a small segment of inventory that was difficult to get, it was really hard to get stuff in. Even Glocks, I remember it was difficult when competitors that had been here before me were able to get Glocks to people and I couldn't. My first Christmas, I did more Buds Guns transfers than I did of my own. So there were days when I came in here and I didn't sell anything. So there were a lot of remarkably stressful times, and you are definitely going to face those times when you get into this. Getting back to my story, I knew that if Hillary Clinton had won, that would be the spark that we would have needed to really bring the business up to profitability. I went from a period of high demand, then President Trump had ended up winning, and then demand really fell off. And I sat down and I made a series, I really, had to force myself to make a series of decisions. I remember having a conversation with myself to say, okay, I have to throw everything into this business. I need to do absolutely everything I can. I need to throw a bunch of darts at the wall and see which ones stick. And I really need to bring my business out of what is going on with this lack of supply where I'm not going to survive this. And so I came up with a rewards program. I drastically cut my prices, and that's why now today I have such an aggressive price structure, is because of what happened there. I went for a high volume, low margin strategy, and it really worked, especially in this market. I think that's what got me into really getting a lot of used firearms. I didn't want, it was never my goal to make myself a ton of money on each individual purchase. The goal is to make a lot of money on a bunch of purchases. So each individual person who comes in, I try and make feel like they're getting good value for their firearm. Each person who comes in who buys something, I try and feel like they got a good deal. And that's just been my strategy. And then the final thing was YouTube. And YouTube is probably the biggest success. Of course, with everything going on right now, I hope that sticks around, but we'll see what happens. But it brought a tremendous amount of awareness to my business. But diversifying and trying to stay creative is what really helped me. I'm not, it's not rocket science. It's just, having a certain level of tenacity and will to keep alive in your market is really what you need. So the conclusion here is there's really no easy time to enter. And right now it's going to be really hard. I'm telling you, if you enter, it's going to be very, very tough. But try and think of how to do things differently. Think outside the box. There's a million ways to skin a cat. And, just try and be creative enough to be able to do that. As I've said at the end of every one of these sort of market analysis videos, if you do have any questions and you want to reach out to me, you want my help, or anything like that, please feel free to do that. I do have to say, please don't come into the store unannounced, and please don't call expecting for me to be able to have a 30-minute conversation with you right away, because I do stay tremendously busy. My email address is in the About Me section of my channel, so you can send me an email with your questions, and I always, anybody who's sent me questions in the past can attest to the fact that I always get back to those emails on those questions about opening a business. It might take me a few weeks, but I will get back to those questions for you. I will also close by saying I don't know how many people, maybe in the past 4 years I've been running my channel, I've had maybe 50 people reach out to me about starting a business. I always say, when your business is off the ground and started, send me an email and let me know, and I'm going to promote your business on my channel, or at least let people know that it started. Or I would just, for my own edification, like to know that you actually went through with your plans and you started your business. Not a single solitary person has ever responded with the fact that they did go ahead and open their business. So if it's something you really want to do, just try and do it. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I know I'm rambling a little bit. This is sort of just a conversational topic for the day, but I'm going to leave you off with that. If you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comment section. If you're thinking about opening your business, again, email me, that's fine. If you have opened your own business recently, or have your own inputs for people who are thinking about doing the same, go ahead and leave that down. Remember, guys, we are a community, and most businesses, you like to treat each other as competitors, but in the firearm industry, I think it's better if we treat each other as a community. The more people we have out there spreading the word about the Second Amendment, more people out there selling firearms and bringing awareness to this community, the better off we all are. So I'm happy to do my part to try and help any way I can. With that, I'll leave you guys off. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.